Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back from our little break. I'm Nolan Barley. I've been your host all day, and today, well, that's a little in my way. That's okay. So I'm going to be joined in a few minutes by Danny O'Brien, a senior fellow Dweb strategy, who is a strategist with Filecoin, and we're going to be talking a little bit about the past, present, and future of the web. So everyone, a warm round of applause and welcome for Danny O'Brien.
Hey, Nolan.
How's it going, Danny?
It's going very well. It's
Excellent.
been a very exciting event. I've been
Great.
enjoying it.
Great. So I want to get us started with a bit of a history lesson here, because we are talking about the past of the internet, and we were just talking backstage a little bit. When I first got, it's 10 years I've been involved in this industry now, 10 years since I went all in, and I came in as a lawyer. And one of the first blind spots I knew that I had wasn't actually computer science, it was cryptography, just the whole science of cryptography. Cryptography goes back thousands of years, of course, and was only used in warfare. Almost all innovations came from its application to war, of course, sending secret messages. And what happened was, at the end of World War II, you guys all remember that movie, The Imitation Game, all about Turing and everything that went on there. It was the thing that broke the Nazi Enigma encryptor. So what happened after World War II is cryptography was actually made illegal. It was counted as a munition, the same as guns or bullets or rockets, because everyone understood the power of it. And for years, there was nothing to do with cryptography in colleges. You couldn't learn about it. It was still entirely ensconced inside the national security apparatus. And we're joined by someone who fought part of that fight to get it out. And so, Danny, tell us a little bit about those early days of the internet when the actual building blocks themselves were illegal and counted as bombs and munitions.
I love how you've presented me as a war veteran.
Well,
this is a
that's what it
great,
is.
I feel like you should be in a rocking chair and we should have Civil War panning shots of the Enigma machine. Yeah, so my background is, before I came to the Filecoin Foundation, I worked at an organization called the Electronic Frontier Foundation, which did a lot of the work to protect and effectively make cryptography, the fundamental blocks of the blockchain, something that everybody had a right to use. I actually spent some time in the 90s fighting on the British front of that battle. The Five Eyes, the Anglo part of the world, was doing a fairly concerted attempt to limit and restrict cryptography use to within its borders under a huge amount of control. So just to give you an idea of how farcical that was, the very early browsers, the Netscape browser that Mark Andreessen actually partly wrote, had two versions, depending on whether you were American or not. If you were in the United States, you downloaded one kind of browser, and that gave you secure communications with your bank, 128 bits worth of cryptography. And everybody else in the benighted rest of the world had to download a 40-bit copy of the browser, which was weak enough for the NSA to crack. And so there was this ridiculous situation where there was a black market in free software where people were downloading these binaries that were, I guess, supposed to be caught at the border guards that were on every internet node and prevent people from doing that. And people were prosecuted. There were court cases. Dan Bernstein, who wrote some of the encryption that you will use today, had to fight a court case. It was a mess, but we won. So we won crypto war, World War I, and now I guess we're in the sequel, crypto.
We're in the
World War
sequel.
II.
We're in the sequel of which war, we're not sure.
I know, right?
We're in another one, for sure.
It's like Web 2, Web 3, or we World War 3? I don't know.
Yeah, we were talking about that a little bit off stage, just about this concept of the forces that are characterizing the world we're living in now being really about that same struggle. It's about centralization versus decentralization. And you can almost run a line through almost all the conflicts that we have right now. You know, when it comes to freedom of speech, of course, it's running through the filter. Do we centralize it? Do we find a way to decentralize it? We're seeing this same battlefront that is continuing to shape the actual engineering of the network. So you want to mention?
So I think that's true. I think that one of the other parts, and perhaps shifting away from this sort of military analogy into something a bit more comfortable, I mean, we've definitely always seen a sort of pendulum swing between centralization and decentralized services. Again, going through the last sort of 20, 30 years, the internet and the web were very specifically designed to be decentralized systems. And I still say today to people that they're sort of the existence proof that you can cooperate, you can build goods and services in a way that doesn't have to have a central controller. And for many people, that was something that they just assumed was an impossibility. And I think many people have had that blinding flash of realization, oh, we don't need a king or a president. We can reach consensus, we can share and work together without somebody specifically in charge controlling or owning all of those assets. I think that that isn't so much a war as two tendencies pulling us one way or the other. I think the things that can turn it into the space of law and politics is almost a failure of our existing systems to really incorporate and represent the needs of people who are building those decentralized systems. And what I mean here is and this is something that we faced in the 90s as well, in the early internet, is that the people who benefited from the internet were not concentrated in any particular country or political constituency, right? That was the point, right? Like it's not like Detroit being the car capital of the world that benefits accrued to people all over. And the problem with that is you don't have a democratic unit that represents that, right? There's no congressperson for Web3, right? There's no particular representative. And when there is, that occurs when things re-centralize up. I mean, the truth is that I think the people fighting the hardest to sort of defend technology and the right of people to innovate often come from places like Silicon Valley, Boston,
the innovators themselves.
Right, but of course that's the centralized innovators, right? Those are all the people in one place in one time. And so it's very hard to represent and argue and convey the needs of a community that's very decentralized like this one, and in many ways are talking about future potential rather than like the billion-dollar industries of the present.
Or let's say even retreading, you know, we had as a keynote here in 2018, Whitfield Diffie, who is the inventor of public key cryptography. He literally came up with the idea of splitting the keys, the first civilian invention in cryptography that wasn't pioneered by a military apparatus. And of course, he went and testified in the Clipper chip days in the 1990s, was a famous capacity of persuading in the political circles. But it looks like we've got, you know, it was supposed to be Marta, who was supposed to join us today. She's actually this minute testifying in Congress now, saying things that are remarkably similar to what Whitfield Diffie had to say in the 1990s.
It's absolutely the same path, right? And what Marta Belcher, who is the president of the Filecoin Foundation, and what we are all saying is this strange argument where you're sort of not going, hey, I'm, you know, Mark Zuckerberg and this is my business and I employ thousands of people. You're going, we need to build a system where there isn't a power base, right? Where we're trying to create an ecosystem, and each of those people within that ecosystem, let me give a, how long are we got?
We're great. We're great.
Okay,
we're great.
okay.
We're great.
Let me give a concrete example here. There was a time when the thing that Congress and almost anybody else in power wanted to know about the internet was who's in charge, right? Who is running this thing? Because they wanted to talk to the person who was running it so that they could find out what's going on and regulate it. And so we had to do this huge educational thing of going, there, you know, it's not like I have to beg Tim Berners-Lee to put up a website, right? Like the internet doesn't have, it's a collective public endeavor. And then suddenly there was this moment where that was no longer true, where Congress said, okay, I want to get the people in charge of the internet, bring me the head of Mark Zuckerberg, right? And we remember those congressional hearings, right? And the tragedy that we'd got into a situation where they could legitimately bring someone there and say, you've got to do X, Y, and Z. And we've sort of seen that for good and bad, right? But that knowledge, that idea that what we really need to do in the digital space is not create a king or a president, but create a public grounds, create a commons, and work out a way of financing it, right? Because if you can't resource a commons, that's where you get a tragedy. But that means that we can't simply turn up and say, this is the thing this is the person who you should talk to. We have to work out how as a community we can cooperate and reach a consensus that we can then take to the regulators. Unfortunately, we're good at that, right? I mean, despite the fact that we're constantly arguing with each other on discords and forums, we're actually pretty good at understanding this long-term goal and this value of having a decentralized, permissionless, free system.
And you were talking a little bit about how to build it. You know, I always turn back to that word crypto economics.
Right.
And people think of crypto economics. It's not a fancy word for economics, by the way. It's economics like y'all know. It's choices this way or that way. Nothing special. What it really is not a subcategory of finance and economics itself. It's actually a subcategory of engineering. It's a collection of choices, economic choices, this or that extends below the engineering level. So a little bit about what kind of things can actually get built and what's actually happening to amplify these tools right now.
Yeah, so at the Filecoin Foundation, we're in this sort of useful position in that we're not trying to change all of finance. We're not leaning into sort of the economics. We're just doing this thing, which is incentivizing decentralized storage. It's the thing that everybody else can use. And that means in some ways we're closer to the heart of the crypto economics question. We just had a Crypto Econ Day here, and I encourage you to watch the videos. Protocol Labs, who's the organization that devised IPFS and Filecoin, put a lot of work into crypto econ, because that's the centrifugal force that keeps these things decentralized, right? It's the easiest thing in the world to build a model or an ecosystem or a market that just goes shoop and collapses into a Microsoft and a bunch of people living off the scraps of their APIs. The genius of the blockchain and crypto economics in general is something where you go, okay, we're going to build a system that not only means that people can make money out of this system, but like we all benefit from having it as a flat, permissionless, decentralized thing. I think we're being reasonably successful in the Filecoin market right now. We have hundreds of storage providers. The network stays distributed. We have governance. We have this whole program. I'm really interested now in connecting to the other systems that are successfully maintaining their decentralized status. So we still have this selling point. Right? The last thing we want is a system which is fantastic, but we can no longer say this is the decentralized alternative. We're just number 5 in an oligopoly of 6, right?
The tension really is between the forces of centralization, and I love that word, the centrifugal.
Right. Is it centrifugal or centripetal? I can never remember which one is in and which one's out.
But never heard of either.
The one that flies out, right? That's what we need to build in.
It's a beautiful word. Unfortunately, we don't have more time for this stimulating conversation. So please, everyone, a warm round of applause for Mr. Denny O'Brien.
I'll be out.